Let's go from those cheerful thoughts to cheerful thoughts in Pakistan, where it seems the Pakistani government has struck a deal with the Taliban. What's your take on that?
You know, that is an issue that it is terribly difficult to disentangle. But I'm increasingly getting to the point that I think we have to define our objective very narrowly. That is to say, what is it that we're trying to do? If you go back to our initial engagement in Afghanistan, the objective has been to create a democratic, modern Afghanistan. That's our words for an objective that, for a decade earlier, the Soviets sought with slightly different words: a socialist, advanced Afghanistan. Both goals are unattainable, because the Afghans don't want foreigners with guns telling them how to suck eggs, how to organize themselves. I think we have to define our objective more narrowly. That is to say, we don't want Afghanistan, but I get also to Pakistan this way, nor Pakistan, to be the basis for international terrorist activity directed particularly at us, but also at our friends. Now, is Taliban a terrorist organization? Or is it an ugly, medieval type throwback of a purely local character? I tend to think that it is. That's what it is.
And you've been saying that for some time, that you've got to separate the Taliban from Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda wants to blow up buildings in Manhattan. The Taliban doesn't.
Yeah. Now, the Taliban does terrible things. I was talking to someone about this last night at dinner, and this person said, yeah, but what about the horrible things they do to women and so forth? That's the painful part. But the same things happen in some other parts of the world. Are we going to go everywhere and tell them how to structure their social relations?
Well, that is, and Pat, this is, we've been talking about foreign policy, and I gave you some writings that I had done, my chapter on foreign policy on a new book that I'm talking about. And that's what we've lost over the past 8 years, a narrower focus, being more prudent in our foreign policy, realizing that we can't cure the ills of the entire world by ourselves.
Limited, as Dr. Brzezinski said, you go for what is the vital national interest in Afghanistan. Is President Obama, I mean, it looks to me like he's backing off this 30,000 number of troops for Afghanistan. We don't know how many are going to go in, but if he puts 30,000 American troops in, doubles the American complement in Afghanistan, it becomes Obama's war.
Exactly.
And it's hard for me, and we want your thoughts, hard for me to see how 60,000 American troops with 30,000 NATO troops can win that war in terms of our definition now of winning.
And some of these 30,000 NATO troops are bleeding with us and doing the heavy lifting, but some are sitting in parts of Afghanistan, the Germans, for example, who don't patrol at night because it's dangerous.
Why? The German character's changed over the past 50 years.
The Germans we remember from 50 years ago.
We really don't go there.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Carlos Watson's up in New York, and he's got a question for you. Carlos.
Dr. Brzezinski, we saw Denny Blair, the National Intelligence Chief, testify last week that he was worried about economic stability or instability. How do you see it playing out overseas, and what do you think we here in the U.S. should be doing about it? I mean, we just had a conversation about economic instability here in the U.S., but Denny Blair seemed to say it's as big or bigger a problem overseas.
Well, that's a very important point. I have this sense that increasingly, as things get more difficult abroad, we're going to be blamed. Not entirely fairly, but not entirely irrelevantly either. And that will contribute enormously to the difficulties we're going to have on the international scene and make it more difficult for us to act in concert with other nations. This is why I think it's a good thing that Clinton is going to Asia, because so much of the center of global gravity has been shifting already from the Atlantic world to the Pacific. You know, the domination of the world by the Atlantic countries, which lasted 500 years, is coming to an end. And now it's increasingly shared with Asia. We have to talk to these people. We have to develop common policies. We have to be responsive to their concerns to a degree that we haven't been over the last 8 years. And it's going to be much more difficult now with the economic financial crisis.
Let's talk about Israel. Obviously, we don't know what's going to be happening. What is the impact of Netanyahu ultimately coming out ahead in that political contest?
It will probably make it more difficult, because my guess is that he will try to move along two tracks. One, he'll be saying to us, don't push the peace process so fast because the Palestinians are not ready. He's not going to do it in a nasty, brutal way. He's going to do it in a clever way. He'll be saying to us, the Palestinians are not ready. They have to be developed. They have to be upgraded economically. That may take another 10, 20 years. They've been occupied already for 40. So, you know, don't push the envelope on this, because it isn't ready yet. In the meantime, settlements can be built and so forth. And the second line of attack is going to be, you got to resolve the Iranian issue. The Iranian issue can't wait. It's a more urgent issue. Have no illusions about it and so forth. My guess is, purely my guess, that the Obama administration is not going to be sympathetic to either line, though the first line is more catchy. You know, the first line reminds me a little bit of the Sharansky line under Bush. Remember, he gave Bush his book, and Bush got sold on it. The line then was different. They're not ready yet, the Palestinians, because they're not Democrats. So we've got to have elections among the Palestinians, get them to be democratic. So we had elections in Gaza. You saw what we got.
Very good for Hamas.
Yeah.
I mean, democracy has been very, very good for Hamas and Hezbollah.
Yeah, that's right.
Over the past 5 years.
Well, because these are populist movements.
But, you know, Zbig, on the
imagine how the Muslim Brotherhood would do in Egypt if they opened those. They did well. But
where they contested the seats, they won 65%.
Right, right.
But let me ask you, on the Palestinian thing, it seems to me it's much easier for the Americans to back down from pushing the Israelis on the Palestinian thing. But Bush would not give the Olmert, the bunker busters, he would not give him permission to overfly Iraq, apparently. Now, whether Olmert was serious about making this strike, Netanyahu and Lieberman, if he's in the government, they will be deadly serious about a deadline on Iran, about if they don't meet this deadline, you fellas take them out or we're going to take them out. Do you think that Barack Obama can stand up and say, you people do not fly into American airspace on any kind of trip to Iran, and we are not going to give you the bunker buster bombs, and we do not support any attack on Iran because we're working down the negotiation track?
If they don't say no to Netanyahu, then I think we'll be paying the price of what follows an attack. Namely, the Iranians really can't retaliate against Israel, but they can retaliate against us in the Strait of Hormuz, in Iraq, in Afghanistan. So we will be paying the price. So I think Obama will have a lot of incentive to say to the Israelis, look, you can't do it effectively. You can only conduct a one-day strike. This operation, to be effective, has to be 3 or 4 days, intensive duration. We don't want you to do it. You cannot cross our airspace.
All right. Dr. Brzezinski, thanks a lot for being here. The book is America and the World. Hey, and Willie, will you call Mika and tell her she can get out from underneath the bed now? Everything is fine.
I was emailing with her. She was very concerned, and I think she'll be very pleased with the way things went between the two of you. So congratulations.
Well, I feel very deprived. I expected Andrea Mitchell. I expected Mika Brzezinski.
I know.
And look what I got.
What do you get?
What a letdown.
Exceedingly superficial guy.
It's disappointing, but you did very well.
It's great to be with you.
How much do you think you raised the IQ at this table?
At least 170 points.
170 points.
You're the favorite guys of somebody that's close to me, though. You really are, the three of you.
All right, coming out the Washington Post, Eugene Robinson.
There he is on the screen.
Yeah, she likes Willie, too. We've got Eugene Robinson with the Washington Post. What is coming up next, talking about his op-ed in this morning's Washington Post. We'll be right back.